Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Greg Rucka, Eric Trautmann, and Mike Henderson party with me today on the podcast. We discuss their incredible new comic book series, The Forged, which released earlier this year. The Forged can be described as the space opera on steroids love letter to old school pulp fiction and pulp-inspired magazines of the 1970s like Heavy Metal. As a fan of these creators, I am 100% biased, but I can also tell you this comic is a must-read if you're a fan of humor, smart storytelling, and gorgeous artwork. The characters are richly developed, each with their own distinct personalities that make it easy for readers to connect with and root for them. The first arc is already wrapped, so you can catch up in time for their new release next spring. So please go to your local comic book store and ask for a copy. Not to worry, there are no spoilers in this episode, just a fun conversation with the creators on collaboration, AI, and the comics we read that we hid from our parents. Listen on for another fun episode of The Mimi and Greg Show. I've been enjoying these conversations and hope you have too. If you have, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Mimi.
Oh my goodness. At long last, I've got Greg, Mike, and Eric all together in the same Zoom sphere. This is
it only took 3 months.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually not so bad. I realize I should have just...
Really?
Well, I mean...
I'll bear that in mind for the future, Mimi.
No. Wait. 4 people's schedule is very challenging to coordinate across time zones.
Fair enough.
Right? So, yeah. But I realize I should have just cornered you all in Portland and be like, we're podcasting now. No choice.
That probably would have been wisest. Yeah. No.
Which reminds me, it was awesome to see everybody. And when I was thinking about that earlier, I was like, oh, this is how there's just a level of comfort. Greg was so kind, had us all over, and Jen was so lovely to make chili. And there was a moment we were all sitting in Greg's living room in complete silence because we were so tired and exhausted. And it was like 10 minutes. It felt like 10 minutes of silence. And I actually, it was the first time I'd met you, Mike. But I just looked over and we just looked at each other and it was like, we're tired. Exhausted. We're exhausted.
It was a day. Yeah, it was a day.
Yeah, so I mean, I know you all have known each other quite a while. So, but that just had a shared level of comfort to me when you could sit in complete silence and be fine.
You have new art up.
Huh?
Yep.
I just say Greg and Jen.
Eric was saying nice things. Yeah,
and I was. Nice things.
I'll stop now.
And yeah, there you go. That was the one.
That'll teach me.
Your quota.
Well, thanks for getting together to be here to chit chat. And another fun thing from Rose City, of course, was your Pulp Friction panel, which you so cleverly had half the room thinking they were there for the film Pulp Fiction.
Quentin Tarantino, yeah. Yeah, mm-hmm. That was a stroke of Ben Saunders' genius.
Too genius. That's the problem.
Yeah,
too much genius.
Genius in italics there. This is the problem with really smart academics. They're a little too clever for their own good, and that one bit him. But we maybe picked up a half dozen new readers, so I'll take it.
Well, to be fair, when he asked for raise of hands, everyone was there because they're like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, Greg Rucka is doing Pulp Fiction now, so this sounds really exciting. They were there for you, Greg. They were there for you and Mike and Eric. I mean, but they were like, oh, there's a new comic. And it is true. A lot of our humans in the room had not yet heard of The Forged, but I heard that they ran over to the table and you guys were sold out that weekend. Yes?
Yep. Yeah.
You were pretty quickly after that panel. Yeah.
I don't have any copies of the first trade anymore.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, nice.
which is an odd thing for me. Normally I have an inordinate amount of trades in the basement, and I don't have. It's funny because I don't have a lot of issues of the Forged either. Like, I have no copies of the trade. I think I only have like 2 or 3 personal copies left of issue 1. I think I have about that many of 2. I don't think I have any of 3. Like, of those, that initial run, it's like gone. And then it starts to climb back up in the post-con delivery season. But yeah, it's, I guess it says something about, the brilliance with which we handled the launch of the book.
I know. Let's wait until social media is completely fractured and launch our book. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and let's maintain the not participating in the Nazi social media sphere. Yeah. So hopefully, we'll pick up another 6 or 7 readers with this podcast. If we're entertaining.
Being that over half the listeners are already readers of this, I feel like
I said, by the time we finish, we're going to have a lot of people reading the book.
Plenty.
Yeah, that last issue is going to just
put us on the map.
That'll be it. Yeah, we will have arrived just about the time we leave. So.
You all are hilarious. No. So it's interesting, though, because when you first kind of launched, okay, this is the new comics coming out, and it was this like this big team of all these humans that I adore, and I'm reading about it, and it's like space opera on steroids, and it's like comics you tried to hide from your parents, and love letter to old school pulp fiction, and etc. And I'm like, I don't know, I feel like you've got quite an audience there with just that alone, and you got a lot of generous reviews and humans who really were excited about this, especially that first one hit. And we kid about the social media machine and all of the negativity, but it does feel like there was a definitive desire for audiences to just have something fun and just with badass characters. Like, who doesn't love all of the elements that you've thrown in there? And so I feel like you guys kid about your readership.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong, but there's something else going on, because now we got to talk about the economics and how comics are working these days and so on. The people who have found the book, as best as we can tell, like it.
Yeah.
The people who have found the book and don't like it, we can't tell, right? I mean, we're not hearing from them.
Right.
But people are having difficulty finding the book. Like, the sheer number of people at Rose City, for instance, who came up and were like, oh, I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah.
Is a problem. So, and it's funny because we spend a lot of time in the run-up to the launch trying to figure out how we could promote the book and how we could promote the book in a way that was not for us morally or ethically compromising. And, we shelled out, we did a mini comic. There was a little mini that Mike drew and that Nolan colored and Ariana lettered, little tiny thing. And we paid to make that out of our own pocket, to print it. We did a mailing that Eric designed, in his wonderful, graphic design style. That was this retailer letter on one side, and on the flip side was a message from evil, right? And it had a QR code to where you could get the first 3 issues in a Dropbox completed. And we sent that out to a good 60, 70 retailers. And as far as I know, not a one of them scanned the QR code or or maybe even read the email. I mean, the promotion right now is a really challenging thing. It's a very difficult thing. And I do believe, I'm talking a lot, but you know me, Mimi, I do this anyway. I do believe that people who find the book are engaged by the book. They like it. They want it. But a lot of retailers just weren't ordering the damn thing. And that's part of the reason why we sold out so quickly on issue 1.
Yeah.
We didn't sell out so quickly on issue 1 because we had printed 100,000 and 100,000 sold. We sold out on issue 1 on the day of release because a lot of people went into their comic book stores, saw the book for the first time on a shelf or on a counter and said, oh, I'm getting this. Mm-hmm. Right. And the retailers who had ordered 2 or 3 or 4 of them at the most were suddenly like, well, I'm out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not me throwing mud at retailers. Right. They're trying to get a business model that works for them.
Yeah.
And many of them are going to be cautious for very good reasons. But they knew the book was coming. It was in the catalog. It was there. Their job was to know what was coming. And if they're doing their job well, it's to know their readership and to be able to turn to their people, their regulars and say, hey, you like Henderson's work. He's got this new thing coming out.
Exactly.
Do you want issue 1 in your box? So, we'll be back. What is it? April? We'll be back with,
I believe so.
Issue
April
7 and 8.
24th.
Yeah. We just sent in the solicits, and that'll be our 3rd arc. The 2nd trade will have come out in advance of it. Mm-hmm. And hopefully by that point you're in far enough that people who are only reading trades, maybe they'll move to picking up the monthlies and so on. So.
Well, April's perfect because, it took us 3 months to do this one. So I'll schedule now so that we can make sure we podcast before the new one comes out, guys.
We'll do it.
For those 6 or 7 extra readers you guys get from my listenership, which I will say, hopefully, 6 or 7 is a good strong 6 or 7. So we'll take it. All right. So question for you, for all of you, and we'll just kind of go around as we did at Rose City on our very fun surprise panel where friends of Rucka kind of showed up, which thank you guys, by the way, for leaving the booth and coming out to come and hang out with us. It was actually so much fun.
It would have been really bad if Friends of Rucka had been an empty room, let me tell you. So I'm grateful, if nothing else.
Oh, now. There were more people that wanted to be there, but scheduling and all that, they're like, oh man, I missed the thing, didn't I? So there were a lot of people that were going to show up, a lot more people rather. I would have needed like extra stage. So it was just perfect. But talking about comics you tried to hide from your parents, I would like to know what those were for each of you, because I can just opt out because I'm a late bloomer when it comes to comics. I just started.
Yeah, you were past that.
I was past that. I was already in my own home. So, but what, Eric, we'll start with you because I'm sure you have a list.
I do. And this reminds me slightly of the time in my 30s when my mom I had come to visit and she went to pour me a drink and I told her everything in her liquor cabinet for the last 15 years or so had been water and she hadn't noticed. So here we go again. So this was kind of later into my teen comics fandom, but Marvel had, and I'm going to apologize now because my idiot dog is in his crate and he'll be making noise. Marvel had done an original graphic novel, Punisher one called Return to Big Nothing. And it wasn't released as a normal floppy. It was originally released as a nice little slim hardcover. Mike Zeck drew it. I forget who wrote it. And it was much more violent than the regular Punisher comics. And Mom would have objected greatly to that one. There was also a brief moment where Frank has sex, so that wouldn't have gone over huge either when I was like 12, 13. So there's that one. I did have a heavy metal tucked away somewhere that I don't even remember what the issue was, but it was full of boobs. There was lots of boobs.
Yeah.
I managed
Lots.
managed to keep that one hidden for a long time. Those are probably the two big offenders. Was that Punisher and a couple of heavy metals I'd squirreled away.
Fair enough.
Next.
All right, Mike.
It was. I didn't have a local comic shop when I was a kid. They didn't. There wasn't one in my area until I was, I don't know, 16, 17 maybe. But I did have a couple of dog-eared heavy metals as well that were just kind of tucked. If my dad had found them, he'd be like, yeah, I'll hang on to this for a while. But my mom wouldn't have loved it. Yeah, I don't remember the specific issues or even the artists that were in them. But yeah, I had a few of those squirreled away.
All right,
Yeah,
Greg.
the impressionistic age. The one that I'm thinking of, I'm sure there were more. I had a issue of Marvel's Epic magazine, and I can't even, like, if I saw the cover, I would be able to go, it's that one.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember the stories in it very well, but there was one that was a black and white, don't know who drew it, where clearly, and it was a woman in her home. The whole narrative is a little short 8-pager of this woman sort of in her, somewhere in New England, autumnal home at night. And she is moving through the house, and you're looking at all these creatures sort of spying on her through like the windows and so on. And as she's getting ready for bed, and the model that the artist had used was very clearly Adrienne Barbeau.
Nice.
Was obviously Adrienne Barbeau. And I remember distinctly, this is too much information. You get the long answers from me. There was a panel where she is taking a bath, and it's one of those romantic solo relaxing bubble baths where she's lit some candles and so on. And I remember, I must have been very young. I remember being fascinated by the amount of effort this artist had put into capturing not just her breast, not just this bare breast, but the nipple. Right, like every crinkle and crease, lovingly detailed. And then the story, the punchline of the story is her, out of the bath, and she's got a robe on, and like she, opens a door or whatnot, and there's like the big lumbering monster, and she tells it off. She's like, "What have I told you about staying outside?" And like that's the gag, right? It undermines the whole threat thing. But yeah, that was a story that I was like. And it was all because of a breast, which is the most American hang up ever, right? It's like, oh my God,
I was just going to say this. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's fascinating. We've all grew up very clearly in different households and different, maybe even eras and whatnot. But like, it's so strange to me that a country like the United States, which is supposed to be so, progressive, but like, nudity is still so.
Have you been following the news, Mimi? I mean, you're in Florida.
Yeah, I get it. But what I'm saying is like, we're all describing the same thing. It's like when you're watching, HBO back in the day at home, and like your parents walk in on RoboCop where everyone's body's parts are flying, and you're like, yeah, okay, no problem. But if there was like one of those 80s sex scenes, you're just like, oh God, this is super awkward. Yeah. Like you really didn't want to get busted. So it's fascinating because that still seems to resonate no matter who, when, what you were growing up. Like that was the thing that was kind of like cringeworthy for your parents to catch you with, which is
we're not
interesting
because
it's so natural, right? Yeah. It's so natural, and you're like,
but it's perfectly fine to shoot somebody in the head and watch their brains.
Exactly, this is what I mean. Yeah. This is why we're a little bit,
and we wonder why we have a gun problem in this country. Yeah,
right. I was going to say that comment that I just brought up. I think I could have Eric and Greg might go off on a 45-minute tangent. So I was like, maybe we should bring this up.
Mike would weigh in too.
Yes.
I'm with you.
Well, now that Mike's in Florida, I mean, sorry.
Yeah.
How do you feel, Mike? Has it felt dangerous for you? Are you feeling okay? I haven't checked in on you. I feel like I should have. I apologize.
My particular area does not feel particularly dangerous. Everybody's 1,000 years old here, so not really.
You can take them.
You can take them.
You can take them.
Yeah, but venture out, 20, 30 minutes in any direction, and yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but that
great.
holds true for a lot of metro cities, right?
True.
Like even Portland, you venture out and which is again a thing in itself. All right. So back to the Forge.
Yeah.
Which I'll probably say like 20 times during this whole thing, right? One of the things that I had noticed in, my very elite podcast research that I always do, Greg's like laughing because, but it seemed like Greg and Eric, you guys had this idea for a while. It's always been in your head. And both of you in separate interviews in separate places, it's like Mike was the special sauce or the alchemy that brought this all together. And I'd love an expansion on that. And how does it feel, Mike, to be the special sauce?
Which order do you want to take it in?
Let's go with Mike first.
There's a story here. Yeah.
Okay.
How does it feel
to be the special sauce, Mike?
It feels pretty great. It feels like being the metal between two magnets, kind of, and making it sort of all stick together. Yeah, that's a nice feeling when you're so into the book that you can't see anybody else ever having done it.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
When you said metal between two magnets, that could have been like, yes, you bring things together, or like you felt very stuck.
Smashed together.
Just like basically there was so much force on each side that
a little from column A, a little from column B. Yeah.
How is that tracking device working out, Mike?
All right, share the story then. Share the story.
So Eric and I think this goes back to about 2015, 2016. And we had been bouncing the idea, and I'm not sure how it initially came around, but the end result of that was, hey, let's do something pulpy with this squad of badass women in giant suits of planet destroying armor. Okay, great. And we bounced some stuff around, and I think had written some few pages, and we had done some write-ups on members of the squad, and we were looking for an artist. And for the longest time, we thought we were going to be. I had gone to Matthew Clark first, and Matthew had indicated that he wanted to do it, and he did some designs, but for whatever reason, and it stretched out over several years. Nothing gelled, right? And Matthew kept going off to do other things, and there wasn't a unity of vision, like what Eric and I had pitched and sort of envisioned. Matthew was not, like, somewhere between us and him and the pencil hitting the page. The message was being disrupted by the noise. The signal was being lost. And at that time, and until fairly recently, when Mike decided he didn't love me anymore and left Portland, there had been a very regular Wednesday coffee date with me, Mike, Matthew, and Aaron Duran. And that goes back. Matthew and I had been meeting for coffee for like 20 years once a week at this point. Like, it's been a really long time. And I hadn't known Mike until Matthew had sort of brought him into the group. And we seemed to get along fine. We liked each other. And somewhere along the line, like, Eric and I kept being frustrated by the lack of progress. And then Matthew finally said, it's not for me. I can't do it. And I'm sitting there at coffee and I'm looking at Mike. And I had seen, aside from his storytelling, right, I had seen some of his sketchbooks and stuff he'd been putting up on Instagram. And some of his sketchbooks, there are these sort of light bondage themed image batches that he's been doing, and that was sort of perfect for what we'd imagined for the Cassandras. And I remember sitting there and literally like the penny dropping and going, "Oh, hey, would you be interested in this?" And Mike sort of looking at me and going, "Yeah, I mean, sure, I'll take a look." And that's how we got there. But it had been, I want to say, a good 3-4 years of us sitting on the idea and the wheel spinning before quite literally the thing I was staring at hit me in the face.
Right.
And I was like, oh, right, here's the solution to that problem. And Matthew wouldn't mind me telling this. I mean, this is not disparaging Matthew or putting him in a bad light. Some things don't click. Black Magic was originally supposed to be me and Michael Lark, right?
Oh.
The idea for Black Magic predated Lazarus.
Yeah.
We were going to do Black Magic. And then when I brought Lazarus, I said, I'm working on this other thing. He said, that's the one I want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it is one of the luxuries of the collaboration is, being able to go, well, this isn't a good fit. What is? So, and so, yeah, when we say he's the secret sauce, he is. This book doesn't happen without Mike, and not simply because he's drawing it and we can't, but it does not happen. It does not happen without a collaborator who got it, was engaged by it, and was additive because he doesn't take dictation, you know what I mean? And we don't want somebody to. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is. It's got this really great energy, and having spent time with you all, literally by just hanging out and like letting you asking you to hold my stuff in your booth or forgetting things and Eric saving them for me. Like, the book Stan Sakai gave me and then I left it there and Eric's like, I saved this for you. I didn't think it belonged next to, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys have such a ease of, synergy, like the way you just kind of everything kind of flows. So what is that collaboration process like? So I know, Eric, you and Greg have definitely worked before, of course, a lot hand in hand. So kind of bringing in this team together, and of course, not just you three. There's two other awesome humans too. But like, how has that been for you, Eric? Kind of adding in, the secret sauce, but also just the whole collaboration. Since it's been so long, it's been in your head, and then now it's like, wow, we're on. Is it 6? We're on 6. We finished 6.
Yep, 6 is out.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
We finished
Second
this.
arc
I mean,
is done.
we're finally there. This is years in the making, and you're like, it's here. I can hold it.
It is the most fun I've ever had in comics. And I know that's not an exciting story for other people, but for me, I'm enjoying it. I enjoy all my collaborations with Greg, and part of what made me want to do comics in general was the idea of there being a small team making whatever the thing is, right? Like his movies, don't like his movies. One of the things I admire about Kevin Smith is that he basically engineered a career where he gets to make fun stuff with his friends. He just gets to make stuff he likes with his friends. And that's basically my career now also. So yeah, that's, after the first issue where like, I'd been aware of the stuff Mike had drawn in the past, and I'd seen his design sketches for The Forged, and I had a pretty good idea of what we were going to get. There's still that unfamiliarity, and that's always a little nerve-wracking. Like, is what's in my head going to end up on the page? Like Mike and Mike's pages coming in far exceeding anything that I had in my head. It was like, okay, I'm very comfortable with this now. I had one very bad experience on my very, very first comic series where communicating what I wanted to the artists wasn't happening. So I'm always first script with a new guy I'm working with is always a little like I'm trepidatious because of my baggage, nothing to do with the person I'm working with. And being able to go, okay, I can just pack that baggage up and send it on its way was extremely liberating.
Nice feeling.
And Yeah, and it's certainly opened me up to being able to go, well, here's a crazy, wacky idea. I bet Mike will make this work beautifully. Which I'm sure he gets those pages and goes, "What's wrong with you?" Which is sort of the goal state of the book anyway for me. Is we were talking about hiding the books from our mothers, and mom gets every issue and reads them, and my goal is once per issue, I get the email or phone call asking what the hell is wrong with you. That's and 100% success rate so far.
Okay.
So
I was gonna say you didn't blame Mike. Like, no, Mike chose to put more
Oh, God,
nudity
no.
in this
Me.
scene.
Wasn't me. I didn't do it.
oh no,
We've been
Oh, no,
we've
no.
been
No,
very tame, actually.
and
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
for all our talk about saucy naughtiness, we've had only like I think what 2 or 3 full nudity, one really sexually explicit image, and even and it's for a given value of explicit.
Mhm.
We have not really torn the Band-Aid off that. I'm
Yeah.
not sure we actually will. That's not something.
Okay.
No, because
Right.
because one of the things that we're chasing, right, is that if you look at those issues of heavy metal, or that issue of that story in Epic that I was talking about, right? That's nothing. It's a bare breast, right? It's the titillation factor and that sense that maybe this is a little naughty, maybe it's transgressive in some way, but I mean, we're not doing porn. We didn't. There are plenty of porn books out there. That's fine. I mean, again, everybody's got a lane. But there's a sex scene in issue 6 that's off screen.
Right.
Right. We don't show it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's no point. There's no need. Right. The raunchiest that issue actually gets is, Vic slowly being stripped as she's fighting her way through the maze to find the Empress skinny dipping in the magic pool at the center. And even the Empress skinny dipping is Mike has her artfully covered. So
Very tame.
Very artfully, very artfully. No, I mean,
it's all about being on the cusp.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd say it's tame. I would just say that it's not like triple X rated, that it's appropriate.
Well, sure.
It's appropriate to the storytelling, which is totally in line with all of you as creators, right? Like you're not going to do anything just to be extra, right? It's all appropriate to the storytelling.
And that's kind of what I'm after. I have a theory about reading, about how people come to stories. And it's anecdotal. Like, I have no evidence for this, but I sincerely believe, and maybe it's simply because it was my experience, right? But if you can catch somebody at the right age where they encounter a piece of media, a book, a comic, where they feel they're getting away with something reading it, right? Where they are encountering something that's like, oh, I shouldn't know about this yet, right? You've got them for life, because they will be chasing that thrill forever. I've told you this. My mom gave me a book called Murder on the Yellow Brick Road.
Yes.
When I was in 5th grade. And it was given to her by a bookseller at a mystery bookstore in Santa Barbara, California, when she said, what do I give my 5th grader that would be, he likes mysteries and he's already gone through Encyclopedia Brown.
Right.
And this bookseller, either out of malice or ignorance, handed over Stuart M. Kaminsky's Murder on the Yellow Brick Road, the plot of which is about porn movies being made on the disused sets for The Wizard of Oz. It's set in like 1938 Hollywood. And the main character has sex in a dentist's chair in it. I never went back. The next thing I did after reading that was go to the library and find everything this Kaminsky son of a bitch had ever written, hoping there would be more, you know?
Yes.
But you can't put out the Forge saying, slip this in front of your 12-year-old and see what happens, you know?
They'll find their way to it. They'll find their way to it. But you're right. There's that little bit of a, should I be reading this? Or even like when I'm on the plane, I mean, yes, the Forged might be quote unquote tame and not, but there are some pages I'll flip to. I'm like, I don't want anybody judging me or looking over my shoulder. Is that kid over there or whatever, right? There's still a moment where you kind of get a little bit of that heart palpitation, which is always exciting. And yes, it is.
That's where you want the window seat and you shift a little bit.
Yeah.
Or turn the contrast or the brightness down
way
on my screen
down
if it's on my screen and just
I had one of those on Saturday actually. I was watching a movie and unexpectedly naked woman and I was like, okay, great. Didn't see that coming.
You feel so exposed on the plane, right? Where it's like you get up to use the bathroom and you just look around without wanting to, and you can see what everybody's watching. And then because we're judgy as humans, we're like, oh, that news channel, or they're watching that, or they're watching this movie. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I've been on planes a lot. Like,
no, it's not just
maybe
you.
I'm just judgy.
It's not just you. I do it too.
And then that's why I think, oh God, are they watching what I'm watching? Kind of thing. So, one of the things I think that will take us down, surprisingly, another tangent, is evil, right? Which is your evolved virtual intelligence and logistics. And it's like, Greg has this habit of like, telling the future in his comics and his dystopian, his reality kind of thing. But it's interesting because, and maybe Mike can really weigh in on this as an artist, because it's like, was it last year, suddenly AI art became this controversial hot topic where I know it's been around, right? It's been around and it's been ever present the last several years, but it feels like very in your face lately, like AI. And then once ChatGPT came out, then it's like, oh my God, AI is here and we're, the Cylons are here, that type of thing. It's a very, so it's interesting one, because of course you have it and it's comical and evil and everything. And there's just so much there, but it's interesting because it's super present, I think, in everybody's mind now. And as we go to read this comic, we have this, I don't know if we call it a character, right? But we have this existence, this evil, right? And so
character,
yes. All right. So, well, for you, Mike, like, from an artist standpoint, like, what was that like as AI started to come about, and then how much fun was it to kind of incorporate the evil character in the way that you've kind of been interpreting it?
I don't do too much with evil because it's not a visual presence, really. And certainly the AI discussion wasn't a thing when we started this. It wasn't really something I was thinking about. And now I'm like, every panel evil appears. I'm like, I'm drawing this, and if it goes on the internet, it's going to be pillaged and stolen and used and mined for something, and scraped for data and used to train other AI to copy my work, essentially. Yeah, it's spooky.
It's spooky, yes?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially because I know Greg and I, like, going through the whole union thing with contracts, like, it's been so ever present. It's just like, but it's kind of this force that it's not just here, like, it's not going away. Like, this is the future of things that we're all going to be kind of confronting, right? And I don't know, in some ways very negative, in some ways I'm sure that there can be good to it. I don't know, maybe Greg and Eric would disagree. I don't know where we're at. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I am not anti-technology. I think, one, it's not artificial intelligence. That's the first thing, right? Like, we've been sold a bill of goods. And that's the biggest problem here, is that Silicon Valley was looking for their next big thing, and they haven't had anything in a long time for them, relative for them. So they pushed something out and they called it something it wasn't, and they did it before, in typical Silicon Valley fashion, before considering the ramifications, the ethics, and the morality of it. right?
Do
So they
not
did
build a terror nexus.
exactly. They build and they did a fuck ton of illegal shit to do it.
Mm.
There's no way you can get around what they did as not plagiarism. All right. They stole proprietary work from people without permission and exploited it. Okay. So there's a whole issue there. I talked to a guy this weekend who is in video games, and part of what we were talking about was that, look, AI performance is something that they are incorporating into the model for the next 10 to 12 years, and it's going to change what they can do. Now, they can do that responsibly, and talking to them about it, it's clear that they're trying to, right? You work with your actors, you set the parameters of what the material can be used for, you set what they get paid for the extrapolations, right? You can do this. It's silly to say, no, it's all bad, right? But the flip side is also, like, it's broken the internet. The internet's now useless. It's literally, in less than 6 months, the internet as a research resource has died because you can't find actual information now. You're literally finding information that says, you know, the recipe for Toll House chocolate chip cookies requires 1 pound of nails. You know, I mean, it's just because they're fucking with the machines. It's easy to do. It's easy to muck up an algorithm. And that's all these things are. They're not intelligence.
Mm. They're
just great big, I mean, enormously big data sets that are being processed. And it takes very little to screw up that data set.
Yeah.
Right? All you have to do is get the number, you know, be off by 1/1000th of a decimal point, and your rocket is not going to go to Mars. Right? And that's what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's, well, once again, the desire to, you know, engage in gross end stage capitalism overrode any consideration of ethical, moral, or even common sense considerations. Mm-hmm. Will we self-correct? Yeah. The idea of evil in the book, and we've actually had, I think, a letter or two about, like, you know, is evil the big bad? And it's like, no, this is not about artificial intelligence taking over the universe.
Right.
We named it evil, and Eric and I argue about which of us came up with it.
Okay.
But we named it was Greg.
We named it evil because it's absolutely, one, it's funny.
It's very funny.
It's very funny that, you know, in Alien, its mother, right, is the AI, right? I love the idea of Vic having to have a conversation with evil, right? And evil I'm just a machine here providing answers. That's all I do. I have no agenda other than to follow my programming. And it's funny that they have to call the machine evil. I think that's a riot. And two, we knew the second we did that, it was going to be provocative. You know, everybody's going to be like, Jesus Christ, they're calling the AI evil. You know, it's like
surprise. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, but the whole charm of the whole thing, and any AI in general, where you kind of, it's that human-like interaction, right? Because it's a character, but because, right? And so that there's that, like you said, it's provocative, but there's that charm because you're having a conversation with something that you shouldn't be necessarily having a conversation with. It should be just like, give me information, but you end up having an actual relationship. And this goes down a whole rabbit hole of so many different things and characters that
it tends to be Eric who writes the interactions with evil and it may just be because of the way it shakes out. It's not, I think, so much by design, but I love the fact that inherently evil is literal because machine, and consequently argumentative. Like the number of times Vic has to tell evil to shut up. Right. And I love the literal answer that evil can give. Like, it's at the end of issue 1 of like, what the hell is happening to the Radiant, And it's like, literally, it is crashing. It's like, oh yes, we can see that. Thank you, computer. Thank you for stating the obvious. So.
Which actually kind of rolls into one of our Discord friend questions.
We got Discord friend questions.
We got Discord friend questions. So one was literally, McGurk says, I'd like to hear more about the writing process and how the back matter / world building is handled. So this is where you were saying, oh, Eric mostly does this or Greg does this. Like, how does that get kind of divvied, I guess, the question.
I've been talking a lot. You give me the answer here. And
I mean, part of me wants to be glib and be like, it's sort of Greg and I having a good idea and then working on it so it becomes fuzzier and fuzzier until we end up telling the editor, Alejandro, just trust us, it'll be fine. But that's not really accurate. I mean, we've worked together on various projects since what, 06? A little before that on the Perfect Dark novel, but like in comics since 06
so almost
is
20
when
years.
I started doing. Yeah. So some of it is just familiarity. Like we know each other's perceived strengths and weaknesses pretty well. Greg maintains that he's uncomfortable with big action occasionally, and I think that's bunk, but whatever. So often a lot of the and again, the process just breaks down to once we kind of know the broad strokes of, Forged is going to be about these super soldier ladies in the future. Breaking down each issue, we often sit in his garage or get on Discord and kind of work the overall movement of each arc, and then for each issue, figure out what pieces need to be where, and then kind of figure out and kind of discuss like, well, I really want to write this scene. I have a good hook into what this moment should be. And and then we'll basically just horse trade pages until we have a pretty tight outline of where we're going. I'm probably glossing over or mildly misrepresenting something there, and Greg can correct me on what I'm misstepping on, but
that's pretty close. We know where we're going, right? The Forged is going to be 15 issues. It's going to be 5 3-issue arcs. And when we were done with the last, we were reserving the right to then maybe go off and do other stories or OGNs, depending on whether or not Mike wants to murder us and things like that. But we know where we're going. And therefore, we have a 5-act structure to the story, right? We have 5 arcs. We know what we're doing. So that begins big. And then as we start talking about, okay, now this arc is the arc where X has to happen. Like we're starting here and we're ending here in the arc. And then in this issue, what are the, and it breaks down component wise, what has to be accomplished in this issue. When it works really smoothly, like the last issue we wrote like glass, like sliding on glass. Wrote that way because
I'm going to get the dog out of here. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'll be right back.
I'm not hearing the dog, but that's okay. So.
Yeah.
But I am. So hang on one sec. I'll be right back. Proceed.
Yeah. So like on this last one, and ironically, it's literally at our halfway point of writing the series. Right. We seem to have nailed our process down. Like we now know exactly how detailed the breakdown needs to be, because what'll happen is, well, okay, we're on issue 9. We have to write issue 9. What has to happen? We're starting here. We're ending here. We know some of the cool things we want to do. We'll have a conversation about the scenes. We'll do a document that basically says, okay, this is the first sequence. It's going to run X many pages. These are the things that need to be accomplished in this sequence. And we do that for the entirety of the issue. And then we divvy it up. What scenes do you want? What scenes do I want? And then when we're left with scenes that neither of us want, we're like, well, okay, I'll do it or whatnot. And that really doesn't happen. That makes it seem like we hit points where it's like, I don't want to do this. And that's not the case.
Right.
It's more like, I really want to write this, or I think you'd be better at this, or you've got a better grip on it. And then we sort of horse trade the page count around, right? Oh, you know what? I need 2 more pages for this. Can I get them off of you here? Right. And then ideally, we can give the whole script, all 44 pages of the book, to Mike at once, so that when Mike reads it, he can go and be like, I mean, you did this 4-page sequence and you're wasting a lot of real estate, and I can do this in 2 pages, and that'll give me 2 pages over here that I can play with.
Yeah.
One of the joys, and I've maintained this ever since starting working at Image, is that when you're doing a creator-owned book, you control the page count.
Right.
We don't have to put ads in. We don't have to have, it's a 64-page book. We don't have to do 12 pages of back matter. We can do 8 if we want to take 4 more pages for art or whatnot. Bearing in mind that any time there's an extra page of art, that's much more work for Mike. We seem to have cracked it. We've got a process that I've had some really great collaborations in comics. Like Gotham Central is the obvious one, where that writing was almost always effortless with Ed.
Yeah.
It worked really, really well. I've had some collaborations that were not great in comics, that were really, really challenging, where it was clear we weren't on the same page.
Yeah.
This one's like Gotham Central. It's as easy as working with Ed ever was. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it feels seamless. And I always find it interesting when there's 2 writers, because you're like, oh, I can't tell who does what. Like, Mike, can you tell when you get the pages, like who wrote what? Or
yes.
I couldn't at first. I think it took me into like maybe early issue 3 where I really knew who was doing which. And the dialogue now I can pretty much tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I was going to say the style of the script, though we have a similar epistolary style when we're scripting. And if you strip out the formatting idiosyncrasies we have, so the document looks like a unified thing, I think it's probably a little harder to tell. Yeah. But if you read these things, you'll be like, oh, that's an Eric joke versus a Greg joke.
Well, the jokes, I think, maybe are a little more standout. But I would say as readers, it feels super seamless, especially when you go back and forth between 3 storytellers, rather. It's like, oh, okay. It all makes sense. But I was curious that when Mike was getting it, was like, oh, that's so Greg, or oh, that's so Eric. How did you go through
I'm pretty sure he does, actually, yeah.
Roll your eyes. No, I'm just kidding. Well, the next question is from our same friend, but it actually is for Mike.
It's a victory for us.
It's a victory. But he says the combination of art format, colors really make this book stand out, and the scope of the story and style of the characters feel big in a way that would feel cramped in a regular format book. Can you talk about the struggles and surprises of going magazine size? And while that's probably for all of you, I think in particular, Mike, with the art, because there are some really cool, lack of a better term, centerfold pieces and things like that really add to the feeling of the book and all the themes that we've talked about today.
Yeah, it's a lot of extra room to work, and I'm not sure. I didn't quite appreciate how much it was at first. I think it took me maybe half an issue to 20, 30 pages before I really started to come to grips with how much room I had for everything, especially the big action pieces. And I took a break at some point in there to do something at DC, and I was like, "Oh my God, this page is so small." I was
going to ask you, going backward, were you like, "Oh no"?
I did, yeah. And I was like, "What is this tiny little live area in here? It's just draw so small." But I was working digitally, so it wasn't as big an issue. But on paper, it's a big difference.
I bet.
Yeah.
So, but do you have a preference?
The magazine format is more work overall, I think. But for this story, it was just, it's so suited for it that I can't imagine doing it any other way.
Yeah, and that was intentional from the very start. I mean, this was like it was always going to be this, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, once Mike was aboard, yeah. I think initially when Greg and I were first kind of noodling around with the idea, I think we just envisioned it as a standard 22 pager, just a normal comic. But
Okay.
I was an early lobbyer for the magazine format because we had done that one variant for Black Magic #1 in that size.
Mhm.
And it afforded me as the designer on that one a lot of space to do like one of the things I despise is the graphic presentation of the from script to pencils to inks to final page transition that a lot of books do as bonus material, and it never looks good. It's always just like here's a wall of text with little. You never really get to see the art because it's too small and stuff. And with Black Magic #1, like, oh, I could finally do it the way I'd always wanted to see it done, and I think it looked. I know this is immodest, but I think I did a really good job on it. And so the idea of working in that format for the bonus material, because I already had ideas of, well, let's put in maps and schematics and universe material and like having room to do that stuff and make it look really cool and not feel crammed into the back almost as an afterthought was very important to me. And my recollection is there was not a lot of arguments. Like, well, what do you guys think about this? Like, all right. Which is sort of how the conversation went with Image when we asked them. So, it just seems like it was
go back and forth. We did go back and forth a little bit about 22 pagers versus 44 for a while. I don't think we decided until it was almost time. But yeah, the magazine format was never really in question.
Well,
Awesome.
it was aesthetically the right choice. For the feel of the book and everything, and I think it was. I think it was more than a good choice. I think it was the right choice for this. And it's fun. It changes the writing when you have 44 pages and you're working in that format. I am more inclined to offer up because I'm greedy about page real estate. I'm more willing to say, yeah, this is a splash or this is a DPS or let's try to tell the story, on a spread. I don't tend to do that. And one of the many pleasures in working with Mike is if you say, hey, here's the sequence and here are the pages. He'll come up with a beautiful way to tell the story that I could never have written. It's like, okay, those choices are better. Those are better choices.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Nice. Well, it's gorgeous.
And it's worth shouting this out. Nolan's coloring is outstanding. I mean, it's unbelievably good. And working in this format allows not just Mike to show off, but Nolan to show off. And it actually, I think, highlights what Ariana's doing with the lettering. Mm-hmm. I mean, more space, more room gives them all more opportunity to sort of show their stuff. And you don't get that a lot in, normal size 22-page comics, which are, according to DC now, what? They're down to 16, I guess. I don't know. We've got room and it's nice to be able to fill it with stuff that is nice on the eyes.
Absolutely. Yeah. As again, selfish as I always am as a reader, it's always like, yes, this is awesome. And there is something really great about all of it. Like you said, from the color to the lettering to the art and it's like all coming together and literally like, I'd even think from the very first one, because I know sometimes when you have a collaboration of people you haven't worked with before, or there's a lot of different moving pieces, there's a little rhythm that you feel like you need to get into. Whereas I feel this one was just there right away. Like, I don't feel like 1 to 6. You're like, oh, they're really there now. Like, oh, we're warmed up. But it felt really from the get go like it's just been dying to be told, dying to be drawn and there. And so it's really nice to kind of see it all come together. And it's just so much fun. Like when Greg and I first talked about it, he's like, oh, it's silly. I'm like, I wouldn't call it silly. It's fun. It's definitely fun. But
I'm all for silly. I think books need to be fun.
Yes. And I think there are elements of it, like you said, the jokes and things like that. It's definitely not taking itself too seriously, but I know we're almost on time. And one of the things I'm more of a silent Discord member. I'll occasionally say what's up, but I did read through kind of thinking about this podcast, and we had some questions, but I know one of the things people were curious about were war names. And I think Eric answered the question saying like, oh, they're given to the person and everything. I was curious if you all have your own war names or you've given each other war names in the Forged War world, or if not, you could do so now.
Oh God.
Oh man.
I'm gonna call dibs on tired guy. Can I call dibs on that?
Cranky.
Cranky. Yeah.
Yeah. War name Cranky.
Write that down. That's going in something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can hash this out. This is so our listeners can go, oh, this is what a brainstorming session with the Forge team is like. Yeah. So in deciding the war names for Eric and Greg, they were just calling each other, themselves their own names. I don't know. Mike's kind of silent here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
war name.
Diligence. I would think. I think Mike gets diligence.
I could do diligence. Workhorse, maybe. Workhorse.
I actually thought about workhorse. I don't like workhorse. I think workhorse is. No offense to the workhorses out there, but I think it's a little disparaging to what you bring.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough. Thanks for that.
You're like, go on.
Discipline might work too.
I was thinking he's very focused.
War name discipline. Got it.
Yeah.
Motor.
No, seriously. I've been doing this for many years now. There are some collaborators who, everybody at this point knows that Michael Lark is not the fastest car in the garage. Okay. The work is beautiful.
Yes.
But he ain't an Indy car. Right. I've been working on a book with Cully since 2018. Okay. Once Mike gets going, Eric and I, we should always be ahead of him. We should always be ahead of Mike. We are ahead of him right now.
Challenge, Mike. I hear that.
Oh no. And not for much longer. And the only grace we're going to get is that I do not. Well, actually, no. I'm telling you right now. I don't care if you're done by Christmas. You're not getting anything till after New Year's. So it's that sort of thing. But seriously.
He's probably done 10 pages since we've been talking.
Right.
So,
yeah. Going with my feet now.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. I was privileged to be able to just hover over him at the RCCC table while he was drawing, and I'm just like, wow, that you did that whole thing just now, like just this moment. And you're like, yeah, I got two more to do. I'm like, what? I always find the art process like amazing, especially those that can do it with distraction and all this kind of crazy, and what you guys are able to sit at the table. So I believe it. I believe that when he's actually doesn't have any distraction, I can't imagine the speed at which he's drawing, because I saw it live.
No, he's terrifyingly disciplined in that regard.
Terrifyingly disciplined. War name. I like it.
War name.
No, like I said, discipline.
Discipline.
So,
okay.
It works as a nice double entendre too, so that's in keeping for sure.
And you're still going with tired guy, Eric? That's
Yes.
it's a
I like
sleepy. Cranky. Fine.
Cranky. Okay, what about Greg? Greg needs a name.
Greg is not giving himself a name.
No, I know.
That's somebody
I was leaning
else's
on
job.
Eric and Mike to do so.
We could.
They're having to be real careful here because everything they're thinking of is like, ooh, that would be too mean.
Too much.
Rucka says it all.
Jackass.
Oh
you know.
no.
No.
We're at the panel. While you guys are thinking, I would love for you to come up with something. But while we're at the panel and Greg comes down, he's like, we'll just start, and whoever's here, they know what's going on. And they got a Rucka rant within like 30 seconds, and they were like so happy because they were clearly, and I thank you, the audience that showed up, and clearly listeners of the Mimi and Greg show, and they were just like, will there be a rant in 5 minutes, 1 minute? And they had it right off the bat.
They really didn't have to wait, did they?
They didn't have to wait at all.
They really didn't have to wait at all.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, ranty. There we go.
Ranty.
Rant.
There you go. Ranty.
I'm cranky,
Ranter.
you're ranty, and
And discipline.
the discipline.
So there you go. Which sort of is the whole relationship right there. So there you go.
Well, I'll tell you what, it works. Whatever it is, it works. So cheers and congratulations to all of you. I'm so happy that we're able to all benefit from this collaboration. And if you haven't yet, listeners, pick up The Forge. You can catch up. You can catch up before the next arc in April, where we will talk again. And I'm going to schedule now so we can keep rescheduling until then, and it'll all work out. But
there's some merit to it.
Yes, absolutely. So Eric, Mike, and Greg, thank you so much. I know juggling schedules and time zones is crazy, but awesome to see you all.
Nice to see you.
Yes, awesome. Until next time, everybody, thanks for being on the show.
Bye.
Thanks, Mimi.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.